pace, as you all know. I just want to give you just a brief overview of where we are, where we've been, and where we're headed. So we've been talking about forming a K-16 collaborative that's focused on creating some educational pathways in the region. There are 4 pathways that we can consider. Last week, we heard some data about some of the areas that are in need. We've collected additional information and rationale around those specific areas. Entrepreneurship seems to be rising to the top here. We've also heard about sustainable logistics in the business space. Cybersecurity seems to be rising here. Teacher prep, early childhood work here, and allied health is another area that has been discussed. We have confirmation that we can ask for funding to support 4 pathway groups moving forward. We also know that in the region that there are differentiated needs, right? When we listen to the folks in southwestern Riverside County, there's a much greater synergy with the folks in San Diego County, and there's some different kinds of demands in terms of the business sector. Or if we go to Coachella Valley, we'll hear a different set of those specific needs. But what we also know is that there's really strong collaboratives already in place in these different areas. And the purpose of this collaborative, this larger K-16 collaborative, is to fund those projects, to get those projects moving forward. And that differentiation, I just mentioned it just above there. But there's, depending on what are the local opportunities. We also know, we also have done a lot of learning around how, to be able to create these pathways in the right kind of way. That I'm having a little technical issue here, sorry. Come on down, I'll go back up. That you have to have the right people in the room to be able to create this, to create these pathways. And we also know that having the right folks in the room and knowing how to be able to collaborate, finding the ways to bring people together across the educational segments, along with local employers, to make these pathways work really well. You have to have this collaboration. You need to have these people in play. And this is why the differentiation down to the local areas is so important, because those communities are the place where this comes together. Now, some of these communities are bigger, some of them are smaller, but that's where the action is. It's happening with one school district, one community college, to some 4-year university within a community, and we have to support that collaboration. We also collected from you a vast array of information about what are the critical components or the best practices or the things we need to consider when we begin thinking about pathways and thinking about a particular framework. What we've done over the last week is that we've looked at all those Jamboards you've been working on, collected all of those ideas, and we distilled them up. We grouped ideas together. Can someone drop into the chat the fuller document that has all of the bits of information that we've collected from the Jamboard? But we collected this information and distilled it to give us an opportunity to talk about the different kinds of support that have been identified and are needed within the creation of these particular pathways. And just give me a second here. Yeah. Scrolling down to the next one. Now what we are going to do is that we are going to jump into a conversation, a couple of conversations today, and this is going to be one of the framing documents for that conversation that we're going to have. What we're going to ask you to do is that we're going to, when you go out into your breakout rooms, what we are going to do is that we're going to have you look at this document plus that document that was added in the chat. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if it was added or not. If someone could give me a thumbs up, that would be great. And we're going to ask you questions about, does this resonate with you? You know, are there things in here that are missing or need to be added? And can you see your needs in this document? Because what our intention is to request funding from the state so that we can then begin to serve those specific needs moving forward, right? So people would come to the K-16 Collaborative Steering Committee, and we will get some ideas and direction from that steering committee as we decide how that funding is going to flow into these different areas across these different communities. The other thing that we're going to have you wrestle with for us and give us some ideas to provide guidance to the steering committee is to think more about how we can distribute this funding. We're looking at requesting $20 million. We should go for the full amount. And what we're wrestling with or thinking about, and what we need your bits and pieces or your knowledge is, if we have a K-12 school district with some high schools in it that feed into a community college, and there's a pathway program embedded in here, all connected to a workforce sector. So there's this employment sector, covering this entire thing. That that these students go to this community college and they go to this four-year university. This is the identification of a pathway. How should we think about how funding should flow to those pathways? How many of these lines that go like this should we be thinking about as we begin moving forward? And we're going to ask you to wrestle with that question and provide some guidance back to us so that we can provide guidance to the steering committee as we move forward in this space. I don't know if there's any clarifying questions that people might want me to attend to, or some of my colleagues, if you have a statement that you would like to add to that. Chinaka, I see your hand up.
Just to clarify, what I'm hearing from you is that there is need to narrow to specific pathways, because there are multiple pathways that exist. So am I hearing that we probably will identify some primary ones that go directly into the employment sector and not try to capture everyone? I just want to understand.
Well, we have 54 school districts. We have 12 community colleges. There's no way that we'll be able to capture everything, and there'll be a lot of pathways that the money would not be appropriate to move forward to. So what we need to think about is, what should that resource look like? I mean, the way I envision this, Chinaka, is that there's a group of folks in July and August who are saying, okay, we have these components of the pathway. We're really far along in creation of a pathway, but in order to scale up, in order to be more effective, we need these resources to be able to go to the next level. And so those are the kinds of requests that would come back to the collaborative, and the collaborative would be making the decisions about moving forward. Whether or not I am a strong proponent of having the 4 workforce sectors part of the game, always moving forward. So education will be there, healthcare will be there, the business, the sustainable logistics, entrepreneurship space, as well as the cybersecurity space. We need to have those. There's rationales for having all 4 of those moving forward, but we do need to narrow down to what grouping like this do we need to form, right? If this is one of the sectors, I'm gonna just say that let's say it's cybersecurity, right? So if we're going to invest resources, with a set of K-12 school districts with 2 community colleges all flowing into one of these 4-year university or 2 of these 4-year universities, how do we think about funding this? is the question that you know we will be wrestling with today in the breakout rooms. Any clarifying statements, anyone? Questions?
Hey, Carlos.
Yes, sir.
Could you just give us a quick update on the status of the steering committee? Because when we left, we were talking about forming it, and now you're talking about it as an entity that actually exists. Are we talking about the hypothetical steering committee once it forms?
That is correct. And I'm going to give you an update on the steering committee next. I could do it now.
So, good question. So, at what point? I mean, right now, certainly, CBU, we could have additional, the deans from various areas start participating in these groups. At what point, really, do we want to bring in additional people into these various pathways?
I don't understand your. I don't know who spoke.
This is Wayne Fletcher with Cal Baptist.
I figured it was you, Wayne. Yeah, I just don't recognize your voice yet. So I really don't understand your question, Wayne.
Oh, so as these, I mean, right now we have these breakout groups into the various pathways, and in the past it was kind of, we weren't quite sure which pathway, if all, we would go down. Now it looks like, according to what you said, we actually will pursue all 4 pathways for employment sectors. At what point, or is now that time where I should go start inviting my dean for the School of Business or for engineering to start participating in some of these conversations?
I think getting your folks to step in so they can provide some guidance on how we're laying this out as we lay out the framework, I think would be important. So okay. As soon as you can, get them involved in the conversation. If you've read the RFP, what you're going to see is that there's a steering committee, and then there are these other advisory committees that are much more technical. Those are the pathways groups, and you know, today we'll be meeting with them. We'll have an interim lead in that space just to get us moving through the May 2nd. Submission date, and then we'll be hammering out just more of the structure and the framework we need to be able to proceed with how we're going to lay out these pathways moving forward, right? So the way to think about this is that what we're creating is a pool of money that would then be available for the pathway formation to be created around or supported around, and people will need to make their cases to this steering committee that is in construction as we move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. So since last time we saw the proposal, that's big moved. I met with Ted Alejandre, Edwin Gomez. I spoke with Henry Shannon, Michelle Decker I've been in contact with her, Sheila Thornton, with Diana Rodriguez, with Tomas Morales and Kim Wilcox. And you know, they're very clear that the GIA board, the steering committee cannot be the GIA board. They're very clear about that, and that the steering committee, in my belief, is going to be made up of about 24 people. The GIA board has 8 people in it, 9 people in it, and the steering committee is going to include additional folks in there. We are the place where most of the recruitment will occur will be in the space around K-12 superintendents, and so any nominations that you have are great, because I'll be sharing them with this group that's meeting to have these discussions. We want those people who think regionally, who think collaboratively. We will need to include some business leaders in this space at the steering committee level. I'm advocating for a private university representative to be in that space, and additional community college folks. We have Henry Shannon from Chafee. We have Isaac and Diana. The question is, you know, who else we need to add, and you can put some nominations into the chat so I can provide guidance to the group as they go through that process. So that's where we are with that. I'm meeting with them next Friday, one more time, laying out some of the more of the governance structures for the steering committee. And I can give you an update about that after that meeting. Unfortunately, it's after our 9 o'clock meeting next week. Also, the group believed that, or agreed that, San Bernardino Community College District would be the local educational agency that actually would be submitting the grant and managing the fiscal components of this and providing some leadership in this space. There's Diana Rodriguez, Chancellor Rodriguez has brought in Noemi Ornelas. She's a new vice chancellor for student services instruction there, and she's the lead on this work with us with that. We're very excited about being able to collaborate with her on that space. And yeah, team, did I forget anything? Any questions?
No, that sounds complete in terms of what you shared. Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody? Questions? All right. A little bit out over time. Our goal is to jump into our breakout rooms now. You're going to need to make some adjustments, Nicole. We need a few minutes to come back together at the end, so you can make the adjustments in terms of the timing to the breakout rooms. In the agenda are the questions that we are going to consider, and the information for the that the kind of the breakout of the different pieces of the pathways are listed there. But if you take a look at the agenda, what you will see is that you will actually see those specific questions we want you to address, and there'll be some note-taking going on in those meetings. Any additional guidance?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. All right, so go ahead and jump into your breakout rooms where you've been before. And we'll see you on the other side. What time are we coming back, Nicole? About 10 till?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, great. Okay. So let's talk about some of the ideas that were presented in the conversations. Mr. Wangler, would you like to get us started? Just a couple of minutes.
Sure. First, I'd like to apologize to my group. I accidentally hit the button that returned me back to the main room earlier than expected. But anyway, that was only the last 45 seconds or so. But we had a good conversation in the cybersecurity space. You know, we talked about the things that already exist in terms of the Strong Workforce Project, Regional Strong Workforce, the community colleges at the K-12 level, some CTIG grants that are supporting cybersecurity in K-12 as well, and then really the connective tissue between those different components. And that was really called out as a really important piece to be able to, those transition points between the high schools and the community colleges and the community colleges to the universities, building articulation agreements, you know, dual enrollment, but in particular, the articulation between the 2 and the 4 year is going to be critical to, you know, for the success of this. And then the kind of the handoff points as well, where you really need coaches, counselors, advisors, whatever, you know, role they're playing, but people that can help students make those transitions from the K-12 space to the community colleges to the you know, 4-year college university level, help them make that transition, be there with them, coach them, guide them, and keep them on the path. I think that was a key component of our discussion as well.
Great. Beth?
Well, we've got a really hot group. We got into the matrix, you know, about what actually happens at these different levels, and we dove in. So it was hugely rich in terms of ideas, of what people are already doing and the depth there. We did spend time on the 4-year experience and the workforce and some of the ways for connecting those things strongly, because that's an area that was less fleshed out. We had the idea of further sharing in this area. So that's pretty much where we spent our time, in terms of what students need and some of the structures that are put in place to help support students.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Who was in the healthcare sector? Is Ida?
That would be good morning.
Good morning.
So for whatever reason, 40 minutes went by really, really fast.
Sure did.
I don't want to repeat it. I just want to build on what's already been said, because those things were also discussed in our group. We had a smaller group today, but some of the things that were brought up in regards to some things that they observed we should capture are the shift in society today, and how do we bring in preventative, holistic support to students across that pathway journey. Things like, more online learning can lead to more online issues like human trafficking, getting exposed to like quick ways to make quick money, especially for students that are faced in families with financial issues. So maybe looking to build in some preventative guidance in the earlier components of it, so our students are aware and families are aware of some social changes and things that they could get trapped in to avoid them from being deviated. Also some conversations around, building that mindset of mentorships, the mindset of, you could still be lawyers, you could still be doctors, you could still be surgeons, and choosing this pathway does not mean that you're not able to do that or you're not competent to do that. Some things that were shared is that a lot of times that happens in our historically marginalized student exposure, that they're limited to dreaming, right? They're kind of geared towards take a vocational path because you might not be able to do this. Anything else from the group that I may have not captured? And then the other big one I think is mentorship. We know mentorships are important. We know mentorships are in place in some places, but they're really hard to sustain and make them really robust and effective. So something the group brought up was like, how do we as a collaborative really help strengthen mentorship programs and leverage those that are well and strong and have been around for a while, so that other groups that might need that support help establish those within their pathways as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can I add just one more thing? Well, I would agree with, she did a great job, by the way. But let's make sure that we're including not just the foster care kids, but also kids in special education, because they're often not exposed even as much as the kids in A through G.
Thank you. Special populations for sure. In the business group, we covered almost a similar suite of ideas that you did. They suggested that the parent engagement, that bar should be extended further, because there's other conversations that could be had. They could get more clarity on that blue chart with the blue lines on it about what community support is, right? Words like CBO and stakeholders, so people know who we're talking about. That more elaboration on the college to career handoff and how that might be a bar that extends all the way into high school. We also talked about the money piece. We started talking about that this money we should be thinking about as seed money moving forward. So those were the big ideas that were in addition to a lot of the discussion that you all had. We have a new person on our group today, Dr. Noemi Ornelas. She is new to San Bernardino Community College District. I'll give you a few minutes to introduce yourself to this group.
Hi, yes, good morning. I'm very, very excited to be part of this group. My name is Noemi, and I am the recently appointed Vice Chancellor of Educational and Student Support Services at San Bernardino Community College. district, and I will be working very closely with GIA as the LEA to support all of the functions that include submitting the grant and ensuring that we are on top of any reporting requirements and compliance. A little bit about myself. I've worked in the community college systems for over 18 years and served the community for over 25 in different capacities, whether it be the nonprofits or the public sector. I have a huge passion, and my background really stems from focusing on removing barriers for students to be successful towards completion, transfer, or job placement. So I've done a lot of work with our K through 12 partners and really beginning to connections from early outreach to a focus on building those connections and collaborations with our high schools. I think that is very, very key to moving students forward. And then really creating those transitional opportunities through policy change and practices that focus on college affordability and success and completion. So I'm really excited to hear what you all have to offer, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you and learning a lot more about how we're going to move forward with supporting the Inland Empire. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Noemi, and welcome to the IE. So we're going to wrap up here now. We're at 10 o'clock. Anticipate some language or a request to start crafting letters of support. We'll give you some guidelines on that for next week. We're going to dive a little bit more into rationales next week for the specific areas to help build up the report, and we'll keep you posted on progress. I know many of you are jumping over to the surf meeting next. So thank you all for being here, and it's a pleasure working with you all. We'll see you all next week. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We're here. You can reach out. All right.